Leave your comments on the AskReddit sub, and I'll read your answers on the next episode of LWIAR. What careers or jobs most attract psychopaths? Freaking car sales. Not sure if the job attracts them or makes normal people that way, but it's full of them. I read that has offered his wife, as in buy the car, sleep with the missus. I heard they both had high mileage. Hey, I was a spot kid at a car dealership from 18 to 20. Pretty decent thing after classes. A quick run down the plate above the microwave. The bottom of it was used very often for mounds of cocaine. Two male salesmen going at it in the back of a van that was traded in while a female manager watched. September 11, 2001. A salesman had to go and pick up a car from a neighboring dealership, but ended up breaking a blood vessel in his nose driving over because he had the AC on and did too much cocaine. Wasn't even his car. I was told to drive 5 hours away to pick up 2 cars with some random dude. He had one working arm, his right arm, so whenever he would change lanes, he would let go of the wheel, reach over, hit the turn signal stalk, and then grab back onto the wheel. He did this at 120 miles per hour in a Toyota Avalon. Yes, they go that fast. Lot of gambling. A lot. I'm sure there's more. I've just forgotten it. Is there something I'm missing with the inclusion of September 11, 2001? I always look for the girl of the dealership. They'll take your offer. I once had one of those awkwardly ask me to buy the car to help him out. I feel for ya, dude, but I'm not making a life decision based on your bad luck. Guilting you into buying a car, that's pretty ingenious. NGL, also shady AF. I have been successful with just using email. I basically just lay out that I'm serious, a date in which I would buy the car by, and that I'm shopping around and want an out-the-door price that I'm going to compare with others in the area. I also tell them I'm not trying to drag this crap out, so I don't want to negotiate 20 times to get it done. Make me your best offer. I'm going to counter with where I want to be. Done fricking deal from there on out. I bought 3 cars this way, and have spent a total of maybe 1 hour in the dealership signing papers and getting into my car and leaving. Some dealers get it and will immediately play ball. The ones who make it difficult and try to act as if this isn't a way to buy a car, they can go frick themselves. I've always bought a car once I've started this process, so it's not like I'm kicking tires. I don't have time for the bull crap. Edit. A few people have asked about new or used car. I did buy a certified pre-owned car this way, but I would almost count that as newish. If I was going to buy a used car this way, it would have to be setting the deal prior to test driving, and just being ready to make the deal as soon as you inspect, your mechanic inspects and it holds up. Unless you're talking about a really rare car. You can find almost the exact make and model at multiple dealers within 100 to 200 miles. I.e. if you're a legit buyer, the right dealers will get crap done for you. And most dealers will offer you a KBB cash offer for a trade-in if you just want a strong estimate of what you'll get for your vehicle. So you can avoid that dance too. Just make sure you're not wasting time and the sales folks will give you solid deals because you're giving them a low-effort sale. It might help them hit a multiplier. It might help them get back into the groove of selling. Or it might just be nice to get a customer who isn't going to try to drag this out for hours either, and pulls the trigger when you work with them. I very rarely comment on Reddit, but here it is. My experience with Brian Heidick. In 2014 or 2015, my then wife and I were in the market for a minivan as we had just had our 3rd child. We went to the dealership that had been recommended to us by a few friends and began driving through the lot. Very quickly, a handsome and charismatic salesman in a decent suit. No idea why, but an ill-fitting suit is a deal breaker in a salesman to me. Approaches us. We look at a few vans and he even helps us transition the car seats so we can see how easy it is with the extra room. My then wife, who was adamantly against a van, falls in love with the van creature comforts and takes it for a test drive while I remain at their dealership with the salesman, Brian, and my children. He and I are making small talk when I realize he looks very familiar. I ask if he goes to the gym I frequent. No, I don't have time for the gym anymore, he answers. He tries talking about sports but I'm just not that guy. It begins to bother me. Were you in the military? Maybe we were stationed together. He says he was not in the military and changes the subject again. Now, it's really irking me, but my wife was back and ready to do paperwork on the car. We go in his office and begin the process. He looks at me and I realize I'm staring at him rudely. I ask, what about this Publix up the road? I go there quite a bit. He gets up, closes his office door and says, okay. When I was much younger and dumber, my wife at the time and I made some stupid movies neither of us are proud of. That was a completely different life than what I'm doing now and I'm trying to put it behind me. I'm no prude and I've seen more than my fair share of porn. But I'm fairly certain I wasn't memorizing guys' faces. Now that everyone is clearly uncomfortable, I drop it. We finish the paperwork and load up in our new minivan. My wife was driving so I take the opportunity to Google his name. Brian Heidick, winner of Season 5 of Survivor. LMAO, the fact that his initial assumption was that you saw his porn and not his winning $1 million. That probably 20 million plus people watched happen is cracking me up. Brian Heidick, your story checks out. Well, it says in his wiki he shot a puppy with an arrow. What in the frick? Little known field that is rife with psychopathy, public accounting. You're just low brew, try adding cocaine to your morning joe. It's because, generally speaking, staff are treated as expendable and paid very poorly despite the high amount of education and massive workload they have. Most people burn out within a few years after uni and switch to industry for 25% more pay for 25% less work. The handful that can take the stress for 10 to 20 years make partner. Finally get the big bucks. Suck the life out their staff and the cycle continues. Many of the people who excel in this environment might meet the criteria of a psychopath. Edit. Should clarify that this mostly refers to the Big Four and other large Canadian firms. Smaller firms operate in a similar way but without the toxic environment and generally treat their staff much better. As a manager, there are times when you need to do something so evil even the legal department won't do it. For those times, you have our HR also, in my experience, tends to be run by people dumber than paint chips. These are the same people. You are Michael Scott. It's funny because Toby is completely not dumb or a psychopath. Chefs, I have worked in high-end kitchens and can confirm this. Chefs are freaking monsters and I've genuinely wished death on every single one I've ever worked for while working under them. Afterwards I always come to realize and remember that it's almost necessary in their line of work. Still though, truly some of the worst people I've ever met. I guess that's largely because you worked in high-end kitchens. I consciously avoid those environments. And my experience with chefs has been overwhelmingly positive. It takes a different personality to run a Michelin star restaurant than a greasy spoon. I'm a chef, can confirm. Hey, I became president of our HOA just so some Looney Tune isn't making stupid rules about where I live. He was a compliance officer with the city council, not with an HOA, but yes, he was notorious for writing people up for petty bullcrap. There we go. Give serial killers power in HOAs and murder rates drop. Murder is no longer a problem. Excuse me, it never associate with a homeowners association, thank you very much. It's you. Now where's my freaking money? Question mark, exclamation mark. Jon Ronson wrote a fantastic book, The Psychopath Test. He interviewed people who created and used the test, as well as many psychopaths. Psychopaths in his book ranged from imprisoned murderers to very wealthy CEOs. Every time I read Jon Ronson I think someone misspelled Ron Johnson, and that happens every time I randomly see his name. Every time. It was James Fallon. He's a neuroscientist. My uncle is a non-violent psychopath. He was a very successful stockbroker. Retired at 50. Has a house that overlooks the beach where they shop, they watch. Has never helped a single person in his family. Only helps people, strangers he can leverage into more social status. One of the most miserable people I've ever met in my whole life. He has no remorse for anything he says to anyone and can change from being a fun guy to a dick at the drop of a hat. And the idea of free healthcare, meals, etc., some elderly actually find enticing. I know a senior guy that had been in jail for credit card fraud and purposely broke parole because he desperately needed eye surgery, detached retinas or something, or else he would go blind. No insurance and no money. So, went back to jail to get the surgery. Ended up having to serve almost 3 years but saved his eyesight. I think statistically it's surgeons and CEOs. I see surgeon as sort of a chaotic good type of psychopath. Yeah, having no emotional response when cutting someone open must be quite an advantage. I used to be a bartender and I knew a plastic surgeon who came into the bar and would polish off about 20 vodka sodas whilst racking lines of coke in the bathroom all night, and when I'd close up and thank him for coming in, he'd say, "Crap, it's 5 a.m. already. I have surgery in 2 hours. When I asked him about it a few weeks later, he said, "Surgery wakes me up and keeps me sharp." Terrifying. Surgeons work 100+ hours a week. How come anyone ever survives a surgery? You get used to it. I'm not a surgeon, but I'm another type of long hours doctor, children's ICU fellow, board certified pediatrician doing 3 extra years of intensive training at low pay to get ICU. Board certified too. I push 90 hours a week frequently enough. I work 30 hours at a time about once a week. I often have to put a tube in a tiny baby's artery at hour 30 of that shift. It's not an issue. After doing this for 4 years of med school, 3 years of residency, an extra chief year, and thus far in fellowship, I've trained myself to be awake and effective at that point. Some people train to do ultramarathons or swim the English Channel, so being an effective procedural doctor working 100-hour weeks isn't that far-fetched. The surgeons I work with do more in-depth procedures than I do, but would say the same thing. Side note, I don't have stats or studies for this, but the vast majority of the surgeons I know and work with are normal, cool, empathetic people. I've seen them with tears pouring down their faces while I run a code on their patients. I've seen them crawling on the floor giggling with toddlers. I've watched football and had beers with them. This trope that surgeons are sociopath, not a medical term, machines, is really old and needs to die. Old and needs to die. Just what a sociopath would say. Can vouch for this. Uncle is a retired surgeon. Would sometimes work for days straight with a couple of cat naps squeezed in if there was time. I remember being shocked by this too, but his wife, who is a nurse, said it's extremely common, the expectation for surgeons, and that they just get used to it and accept that sleep deprivation isn't an excuse for mistakes. Seems crazy to me. It's absolutely absurd. We're not allowed to drive when impaired, but for the people who cut you open it's a requirement. Because the surgeon has been working 100 hours a week since forever. I could do this in my sleep. Isn't that much of an exaggeration? Yeah, my dad is a general surgeon and he's worked plenty of 100+ hour weeks. When I was growing up he regularly was working 70 to 80-hour weeks. Made me not want to do medicine at all. For those wondering, there's 168 hours in a week. Sales. It's known that psychopaths excel in sales because they do whatever they can to get ahead. Learned about it in psych in my undergrad and it always stuck with me. Edit. I've worked sales jobs myself, so I'm not judging anyone at all. I am just relaying information I recalled from my undergrad. My dad is a born salesman, people always said. What a backhanded compliment that is. The only thing worse is natural politician. I sell cars. I've worked sales for the last half-decade or so. Sales attracts all sorts of people. It has a very low entry bar, but a pretty steep curve as far as success goes. I think most people in the business are fairly decent, normal folks. However, with that said, there are always crazies. Always. And they do tend to excel. It's really funny as a coworker, because you know the person on a deeper level, from spending so much time with them. You wonder, why the frick do people eat this guy's crap up? And it feels weird to you. But they have this ability to be very, very likable on a surface level. And it works. Good salespeople will never set off your alarms. Craziest experience you've had as a carny? Go, please. LMFAO, are you voluntarily out of the game, or just on break due to COVID? Don't you dare shorten this long story you speak of. Paparazzi. When they started paying them enough money to not care for photos. Reddit mods. Jobs. Nah, I respect janitors. Thanks for watching LWIAR. The best of recent r/AskReddit submissions and comments. If you like this video, check out LWIAR too. And don't forget to like and subscribe.